And so it seems like Locke's story just keeps going. Although where it is going, nobody knows. Because Locke has been released with a very interesting twist. There is a big mystery that is happening behind his character, and up to this point, Riot just refuses to tell us what it is. And every time there is a new lore drop, we get more breadcrumbs, but we still don't know what's going on with the dark magic behind Locke's abilities. And yesterday, Locke got his own comic that is following what happened to Vayne. And here, yet again, we got more plot twists that are being set up with more breadcrumbs. And I have to be honest, I really love these 10-minute comics. It really feels like you're watching an episode of something on Netflix. And with every new comic, you can feel the quality getting higher and higher. And so, let's dive into the latest comic that is focusing on the story of Locke after the cinematic we got last time. So, as always, these comics start with a summary. And so here it recaps how Vayne got summoned into the Wildwoods with a letter that came from a family friend. Of course, this is a letter that you will remember from the previous comic about Vayne. And it also recapped how Vayne arrived in the Wildwoods because the letter promised that Vayne would learn the truth behind her parents' death. But instead of actually learning anything, Vayne was forced into killing the family friend because they got corrupted by a demon. After which, Corvin Locke arrived, which was also shown in the cinematic. With Locke, of course, being her childhood friend, who arrived here to cleanse Vayne off of her own demon. After which, the comic jumps into the action as it follows directly what happened in the cinematic. Specifically, this follows up on the scene where Locke threw out the skull that is sucking in demons. I mean, here you can specifically see the skull with the pins above them, and it should be the exact same scene where Locke grabbed Vayne's hand as the demon is being exorcised. But it is here that Locke mentioned that normally demons don't feed on scraps. They look for bigger meals, meaning that Vayne was clinging onto some really strong emotions. Specifically in her case, he mentioned grief and rage. After which, of course, this scene ends with the demon being captured in the skull. Then we zoom out to see the Wildwoods and we get to see the magic in action in the distance. Now, interestingly enough, in the cinematic, after Locke exorcised Vayne's demon, Vayne just stood up and the two greeted each other, and that was it. But it seems like all of that was done for the good old rule of cool. Because instead, canonically, after Locke exorcised the demon out of Vayne, Vayne was exhausted and she stayed lying on the ground. So of course, Locke had to get her to safety. So first, we get a quick scene where Locke barely recognized Vayne, because he remembers her as the cheerful girl when they were younger, not whoever this depressive person is, and so he quickly came to terms with the fact that the young Vayne was gone. And so he picked her up and walked out for safety. And that safety eventually became the family house we can recognize from Vayne's previous comic. Except now it has been abandoned for many years. Then, after a while, Vayne wakes up in the living room and she immediately starts wondering what happened. And so thankfully for us and for her, Locke recaps what happened. Simply said, Vayne went a little too far into the Wildwoods and a demon took over her. After which, the comic starts getting into the interesting part. It is here that Vayne reveals that this family house actually belonged to Niles, which is the family friend that trained Locke and Vayne when they were younger. And of course it is the same person that Vayne had to kill in the last comic after he got possessed by a demon. And here, a very quick shout out to Seth, who noticed something really cool. Because if you have a look at the background where you can see the family portrait with Niles, you can actually see the pendant on his neck, which is similar to all the icons around all of these demon hunters, is actually the same symbol you can find on the Blackfire torch. That is a really cool detail. And it kind of foreshadows what's really going on here. And so, Vayne starts wondering, why did Locke bring her here? And as he cleans off his tools, he mentions that this place was well warded. Which is not only a reference to League of Legends, because you're putting down wards for visions and stuff, And also keep in mind that the wards in this universe that can ward off demons actually look like wards, as was shown in the Act 1 cinematic. But also, as you'll see, there is a really good reason why this manor specifically was well warded. But before we get to that, Locke wondered, why did Vane come here? And she revealed that she got a letter from Niles, which is exactly what we saw at the beginning of Vane's comic. Which is where the comic starts giving us some flashbacks in the form of their inner souls. Of course, this is a reference to Locke exercising the souls of the people he meets through the ultimate. And so here we can see Niles training young Vane and Locke. And so then Vane explains what the letter told her. Niles essentially told her that there was a loose demon, and that if she came back, he would tell her the truth about her parents. At first, Locke couldn't believe that Vane would even trust him. But Vane explained that when her father got sick, it was Niles who helped them. And night after night, he was there to talk with them for hours. So if anyone knew what that sickness was, it had to be Niles. Locke then snarked that Niles wasn't wrong about the demon, but he was wrong about who needed the saving. By which he meant that Niles himself needed some help, but also it hinted at Vane. And Vane didn't like that, because Locke wasn't saving, he was exorcising, with spells and black magic. Something a lot of Demacians would have an issue with. And remember, this scene is happening after Locke already exorcised the demon out of Vane. Which is where some juicy new lore kicks in. Because Locke then explained that the tattoos on his body were not spell work. It wasn't wards, it was scars. And these scars were not something he decided to get himself, it was actually his mother. After which, in the background, we can see that the family line is doing some questionable things. You know, cultists waiting in the background as kids fight and train with real weapons. You can even see that the girl is carrying a smaller version of the coffin. Anyway, Locke revealed that it was a tradition to engrave dark magic into the bodies of the young ones, meaning that the entire time, as they were training to be demon hunters, the final step was to become a living weapon through dark magic. And unfortunately, most of them didn't make it, but Locke did. And here we can see him getting the magic carved into his body. And interestingly enough, this is a very similar process to how Mel technically got her own magic in the Mbessa novel, where the Black Rose were practicing very similar things. So at least this is all in line with the universe. Anyway, this is how Locke became something like the chosen one for the cultists. But again, as it is in character for Locke's entire reveal, the exact details to what kind of magic this actually is are still kept a mystery. But we can assume that all of this is linked to Locke's ashen magic. Or perhaps combined with the glasses, it is tied to why Locke can see demons. Anyway, Vane that got sidetracked by the scars, and she felt empathy towards Locke for having to endure this. But then, once again, rage slowly took over her. Because it is the black magic that is tempting and corrupting, and that is what was behind the destruction of her parents. But once again, Locke revealed that while Vane believed that her parents were good, and that it was the black magic that tempted them, the truth was somewhere else. And so all of Vane's rage was based on a lie. But since that rage is what attracted the demons, it needed to be stopped, and so Locke had to tell her the truth. You see, originally, the dark magic that was shown here was used to protect people. That is simply because the Wildwoods are really full of demons. But there were also some who perhaps became cultists, who used this to draw the dark powers towards themselves, to potentially get empowered by darkness. And it turns out that Niles Manor specifically was a place where these people went to get cleansed. That is why Locke previously mentioned that this manor was well warded. It's because this is where the nobles went to get healed after they tampered with black magic. And Locke revealed that this also included Vane's parents, revealing that her parents did indeed try to handle dark powers. But once it all backfired, they went here to get healed. Perhaps too late. And so of course, Vayne being Vayne, she refused this truth. She believed that her parents were good people, that they were just sick and they needed treatment, nothing more. But Locke brought up a pretty good argument. The Demacian capital was full of really good healers. So if they were sick, why would they come to this manor specifically? A place that is at the very edge of the kingdom. What's worse, Locke revealed that Niles couldn't handle the truth either. And he also refused to believe that Vayne's parents tampered with dark magic. And even after Locke cleansed him many times, it became Niles' end. And now Vayne was heading towards the same direction because she also refused the truth, which only amalgamated in rage. And Locke literally just witnessed that rage being the source of a demon that took over her. And if he wasn't there, she would be dead. And so Vayne had to realize that her parents were not the good people she was trying to avenge. That was the truth that hurt, but it was the truth that she had to face. Or else it would become her end too. After this, the scene then silently goes on into the night and then into the day, which is where Vayne got ready to walk out of Niles' manor, and of course, Locke was waiting for her outside. Now, Vayne mentioned that she didn't really need a guide, and Locke replied that the road was open to anyone, and so he was just walking the same path besides her. But in reality, Locke revealed that Vayne still carried a lot of rage, and that he would make sure it doesn't consume her. And so even if Vayne decides to live in a lie, he would be there to take care of her, one way or another. Hinting that should Vayne eventually get consumed as well, he would be there to end her, just like how Vayne previously ended Niles. And that is where this comic ends. Once again, while there were no massive reveals besides the fact that we now learned about the cult, and we learned that Vayne's parents were actually doing something shady, and we learned that Locke was part of something really dark against his own will. But the rest of the reveals were kinda more breadcrumbs, which once again should be leading to more mysteries, but so far Riot just refuses to give us more info. And who knows, maybe this is there because they are actually heading towards a bigger story sometime later. I mean, yes, all of these are really good setups. But what are these setups really for? It's been a while, we're kinda missing the point where all of this is heading, and if you ask me, with the current experience that I have, from my point of view, all the breadcrumbs lead to the right MMO.